Hello, once again, it's the Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, CW. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to hit that bell on YouTube, get notified when new videos go live, or subscribe to the podcast on any and all platforms. You know what? Not or, and subscribe on any and all platforms. Today, we're talking about the Judgment Day. Man, Judgment Day really is running Monday Night Raw. They open the show, they fill out the middle, and then they pull the curtain at the end. They close it out. And at this point, they kind of have surpassed the Bloodline as the premier faction in WWE, right? Bloodline has reached its apex. I think WrestleMania 39 really cemented the Bloodline's sort of historic run as the top storyline in WWE, maybe in professional wrestling at the time. And there was no close to the story because, I mean, it's WWE and it's professional wrestling and stories never really end. They just sort of either go on hiatus or, whatever. But Bloodline, they were like, no, we'll keep it going. Cody lost, Roman retained, the Usos lost their titles. And after that, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn had the titles that didn't do much with it. There was no real drama with their title reign, but the moment they dropped it to the Judgment Day, the titles felt more important. And I always attribute that to babyfaces versus heels. Babyface, you want the babyface to win. You want them to climb that ladder. You want them to overcome the struggle, and you want that satisfying stand atop the mountain with the titles. But after that, if there's no credible threat to the title and babyfaces just continue to win, the titles lose a lot of that cachet, right? But heels, you want to see them lose. And the more they win, the more you are invested in watching them lose the titles. And Judgment Day are doing that for the tag titles the way the Usos did. Actually, I don't think anyone really but wanted the Usos to lose. I know during the Bloodline when the Usos were the longest reigning champs or whatever, I was rooting for them to keep those titles forever. Not because they were heels, but because I felt like the streak that they had put in, I didn't want to see it end. After a certain point, you're invested in the streak and less about them losing. I also never I never saw myself thinking the Usos were heels, whereas the Judgment Day are definitive heels. They're emo. They come out with the darkness and all that stuff, and Finn, and they're bad guys, right? And these days, now that the Bloodline has kind of plateaued a bit, Judgment Day has skyrocketed past them as the premier faction, with Rhea Ripley taking the stage as the definitive leader of the group. And last time on Monday Night Raw, Cody Rhodes basically called it out, saying, we know you guys say that there's no leader in the Judgment Day, but it's Rhea, right? She's calling the shots. She's making the deals. She's the one talking to Paul Heyman with the Bloodline cutting deals. She's the one being seen in the back talking to Drew McIntyre. She's the one cutting promos with, Seth Rollins. And you guys are the tag champs, and that's great, but, Rhea runs the show. And there's no more evidence than Rhea. It was like plastered all over Raw. Normally, wrestlers will, have their vignette, they'll have their match, and then they get to leave. She was there the whole day. I don't think she opened the show, but she was there. She came out with Dom after Cody decided to do a 1v2 against the tag champs. She came out, and then she also came out for the contract signing. She had a couple backstage moments with Adam Pearce and Seth Rollins, and then I believe she came out for the Drew match. She was there the whole day. Rhea Ripley is they're banking on Rhea Ripley. And if we are to move or hand the baton from one superstar to another to kind of carry the major storyline, I am fully on board with Rhea Ripley taking the baton from Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns will go down in history. He's longest reigning champ. He had, one of the best storylines in wrestling, but now that he's sort of just kind of in that middle period where we know he's not going to lose anytime soon, because that's the match that's going to happen at WrestleMania. So he's just champ. But Rhea Ripley has nothing but, open runway in front of her to do amazing things. Not just with her title, which honestly, the title reign hasn't gone, spectacularly. She's been burying people left and right, and there hasn't really been a credible champ. And even now, when they brought Nia Jax back and she kind of buried a bunch of people, now they've put them in this 5-way title fight at Crown Jewel, which kind of diminishes the title reign, because Rhea can pin anybody. Anyone can take the pin. It's probably going to be Raquel again, because they won't pull the trigger on her either. But every story that Rhea Ripley's in, her becoming this sort of mob bossy string puller, which is exactly what Roman Reigns was. He wasn't really the mob. He was a mob boss, but he wasn't like conniving. He was never making deals. He would just handle business. Rhea Ripley's more like, I'm going to make connections. I'm going to, lie, cheat, and steal my way to making Judgment Day the most dominant faction in WWE. And the storytelling around that could be really cool, with Rhea being like this intimidating force for both, the men and women's locker room. That being said, Damian Priest and Finn Balor are great tag champs. Damian is deceptively good on the mic. I haven't heard him cut a bad promo yet. He's flubbed a couple lines here and there, but nothing that you would call out like that was a bad promo. Damian Priest is really good. And Finn Balor is a legend. He's incredible with the titles. And I want for them what the Usos had for the tag championships, right? I think not having them streak and having Cody and Jay break that sort of reign was a weird step, but I get it. It gives them credibility. They won the titles back. They buried the baby faces, and that was another struggle that those guys have to overcome. But the tag division needs a little bit more restructuring, and I don't think Jay and Cody are the ones to do that. But Raw did have a moment where they kind of pitched a bunch of tag teams that will go after the tag champs eventually, which is, Alpha Academy, New Day, and now DIY. Once Eric is back, it'll be Eric and Ivar and the Viking Raiders. So hopefully they kind of structure the tag team division to kind of go after Damian Priest and Finn Balor, and having them sort of hold most of the gold, maybe not all the gold, but is vital, I think, for the Judgment Day to be put over as much as they need to be. I will say that I was never a real fan of the kind of dark gothic theme, but it's grown on me to the point where they don't reference it anymore. It is what it is. The Judgment Day is what it is. The name, like every other name, has grown on me. I don't hate it anymore. I don't like it particularly because, again, I grew up with Judgment Day being a pay-per-view. So they're just named after a pay-per-view. But I digress. As a group, as a unit, they're just effective. I think Rhea being the leader makes sense. I think Finn and Damian fit as tag champs, and I think Dom has crested over from being like, I think they used to pitch him as like the most heel wrestler in the company. I don't think people boo him now because he's a heel. They boo him now because they're supposed to. The boos are so loud, it's just to drown him out. It's no longer like, we don't like you. Now it's like a gimmick, which is really going to be hard for him to like get past. The same way Kurt Angle's "You Suck" has followed him all the way here. All those boos are going to follow Dom forever. But who knows? Maybe it'll help him get over. I don't know. But the package of the Judgment Day, in my eyes, is definitely the dominant faction in WWE, and I'm wondering how they're going to factor into Survivor Series. You know it's going to be huge. What do you think of the Judgment Day? How do you think they'll factor into Survivor Series? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for listening once again. This has been the O Wrestling Podcast, and don't you ever forget.
I'm your friend, but if I ever see you in the ring, I can beat you. Don't you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah!